Hurricane Ian has ravaged through Florida and now has made landfall in South Carolina. So we're going to discuss kind of the political response to this and how a lot of people on the right are hearing the conversation being brought up from the left about climate change in relation to this hurricane and around the topic. And they're saying, don't politicize this. That's a bad thing to do. So we're going to discuss that. We're going to look at Sean Hannity and then I'll give you my thoughts. But first, just to give a little bit of information about the actual hurricane itself. Hurricane Ian made landfall in South Carolina Friday as a Category 1 storm after leaving a path of catastrophic damage across southwestern and central Florida. The National Hurricane Center said Ian, which regained hurricane status after a brief span as a tropical storm, made landfall near Georgetown, South Carolina, with maximum sustained winds of 85 miles per hour. In Florida, the scope of devastation from the storm was starting to become clear as rescue missions continued and power and water outages persisted. New images on Friday show extensive wreckage and disastrous flooding. State emergency officials announced 21 deaths as of Friday morning. However, they're still not sure if all are directly related to the storm. So that's just preliminary. Obviously, it's going to take a second to actually get a full sense of the effect of the storm. Here is Biden speaking to this, and then again we will look at Sean Hannity and discuss some political elements.
And as you all know, the situation in Florida is far more devastating. We're just beginning to see the scale of that destruction. It's likely to rank among the worst of the nation's and the worst in the nation's history. You'll have all seen seen on television, homes and property wiped out. It's going to take months, years to rebuild. And our hearts go out to all those folks whose lives have been absolutely devastated by this storm.
Absolutely. So it may rank among the top hurricanes in the United States. At least that's what people are speculating, which is absolutely wild. And as he said, we absolutely are thinking about the people of Florida and as it enters into South Carolina, them as well. Okay. So then here is Sean Hannity saying something we hear quite often whenever certain disasters or crises arise. And within the conversation around that type of event, people will start talking about what is the root cause or what should be thought of in relation to this. What discussion should we have in light of this thing? And we'll hear the refrain often from people who don't want those subjects to come out. Don't politicize a tragedy, right? So you hear this when mass shootings happen. A lot of times Republicans will say, don't politicize this by talking about gun control. And I've talked about before, no, the best time, the most honest time, I mean, it should be always, but is around a conflict or event in which actions that could have been taken could have prevented that very event, right? Because we can't just talk about what actually happened. We should talk about how do we prevent something bad from happening. Now, it's very different with weather events because there is a true fact that you cannot say that a particular weather event would or wouldn't have happened if climate change was less severe. You just can't do that. But what you do know is that we're seeing evidence that the sheer devastation and severity of weather events are getting to a much larger extent, right? Climate change is causing weather events to be more devastating and more severe. So here's Hannity saying, don't politicize it by talking about that.
Just simply tell the truth that the president is and has been for a long time a cognitive wreck, and our country is facing crises on multiple fronts as a result, although according to the left, Biden cannot be held liable for any disaster. Now, according to them, every crisis that's caused by climate change. Naturally, this week, they were once again politicizing even the weather. We've had hurricanes all throughout our history, but this one is, of course, has to be politicized. Take a look.
So, again, if anyone's saying that this particular hurricane is the effect of climate change, that's not a true statement because you can't, draw a direct line between one event and climate change. That's just not how it works. But what you can say is, wow, we're seeing that weather events are getting more severe. And, one of the things he talks about in his longer segment was, see, they tried to politicize this just like how they politicized the wildfires in California. And it's crazy because no, the rising temperatures and the more, the extremes being brought more dramatic to both sides is causing situations where we have those devastating wildfires, we have more devastating hurricanes, and in many other weather event areas as well. It is the truth. Here's a little bit, just a very, very short kind of summary of that. Major hurricanes are by far the world's costliest natural weather disasters, in some cases causing well over $100 billion in damage. There's now evidence that the unnatural effects of human-caused global warming are already making hurricanes stronger and more destructive. The latest research shows the trend is likely to continue as long as the climate continues to warm. So there's tons of research, and I'll put this entire article in the description around this. You guys understand it. And so then the only question is, what is the appropriate nature of talking about that during a crisis? And to me, you can only do so much discussion around what is happening in that very moment. You should cover every aspect of it, of course, that's important. But I think it's fair to say, is there a way that we could prevent so many of these? Or is there anything we're doing that are causing these to become more extreme, or whatever it is? I think that's completely appropriate to bring up around this conversation for sure. Let me know if you agree in the comments, and we will continue to follow the hurricane very closely.